What if the one place you thought was your safe haven suddenly turned into the neighborhood's biggest scandal? What if the woman preaching community values decided your grandfather's barn was a crime against beige perfection and started treating your property like her personal playground? And what if, just what if, that same barn was quietly hiding a sworn county sheriff, watching her every illegal move and waiting for the perfect moment to flip the entire script? It was one of those crisp October mornings in Willow Creek Estates, the kind where the air smells like fresh-cut grass and false promises. I was Ethan Caldwell, just trying to sip my coffee and pretend the world outside my kitchen window still made sense. 43 years old, former dock worker turned antique restorer after a back injury ended my real career. The barn, my barn, had been standing on this 15-acre patch since my grandpa built it in 1978. Long before some developer carved the rest of Willow Creek out of farmland and slapped an HOA covenant on every cookie-cutter McMansion that followed. My deed was crystal clear. I was never, ever part of their little club. But Deborah Whitaker, president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association and self-appointed guardian of property values, had decided facts didn't apply to her. She showed up like a bad reality show villain, starched white polo screaming, "I'm professional," hair sprayed into submission, clipboard clutched like it was the Ten Commandments. Behind her, 6 volunteers in those ridiculous neon green vests that read Community Safety Patrol in giant letters, as if they were SWAT instead of bored retirees. And leading the charge with bolt cutters big enough to fell a redwood was Gary, her personal enforcer, the guy who probably still bragged about being hall monitor in 1987. I watched from behind the curtain, heart hammering but voice steady when I hit record on my phone. The metallic screech of those cutters biting into my grandfather's original padlock sliced through the quiet like a chainsaw through silk. Crack. Done. Dust puffed up in the golden light. Deborah stepped forward, chin high, voice carrying across the street so every rubbernecker could hear. As president of this association, I am lawfully exercising our right to inspect for code violations, safety hazards, and anything that threatens our collective home values. This eyesore must be addressed. Eyesore. That's what she called the hand-hewn oak beams my grandpa had cut himself. The same beams that had sheltered 3 generations of my family. I set my mug down without a sound and dialed my attorney. Emily Vargas. They just cut the lock, I whispered. Gary did the honors. Every second on camera, Emily's voice stayed ice calm. Do not step outside. Call 911 right now. Tell them 6 people are trespassing and destroying property. I'm filing the emergency motion as we speak. I followed orders. The operator sounded bored until I mentioned the bolt cutters. Then the cruisers rolled in, lights flashing blue and red across my living room walls like some twisted disco. Deborah emerged from my barn still clutching that damn clipboard, face already flushed the color of cheap wine, launching into her greatest hits speech. I have authority. He's uncooperative. I'm protecting everyone's investment. The officers listened. They took statements. They looked at my deed. And then one of them quietly told me, rock-solid trespassing and criminal mischief. Sir, we'll be in touch. Deborah drove off still muttering about responsibilities, but I knew her type. She didn't retreat. She reloaded. That night my phone exploded. Emergency HOA meeting. Serious threat to property values. Screenshots flooded in from decent neighbors who didn't buy her nonsense. She'd emailed the whole 280-home neighborhood calling me reckless, dangerous, even hinting my workshop might be an unauthorized business. I saved every word. I'd already upgraded to 8 4K cameras feeding straight to the cloud. Nothing would disappear this time. 5 days earlier, something had shifted in my favor that Deborah would never see coming. I was sanding a mahogany sideboard late at night when I heard soft movement in the back corner where I'd set up a cot and mini fridge. I grabbed a sandwich and called out, "Hey, take it easy. Stay as long as you need. It's quiet here." A familiar gravelly voice answered from the shadows. "Thanks, brother. I owe you big." Lieutenant Marcus Hale, my best friend since high school, now a decorated county sheriff on medical leave after a nasty takedown, shredded his shoulder. He needed peace. No reporters. No pitying looks from his own neighbors. My secluded barn was perfect. Nobody knew a sworn officer was healing up in my workshop. Not yet. But Deborah's ego was about to make sure everyone found out. The emails kept coming, each one more unhinged. She sent a legal notice on fancy cream paper threatening $500 a day fines from some phantom law firm that didn't exist. I forwarded it to Emily. Her reply was instant. This is textbook harassment and possible fraud. County Attorney's Office is already looking. Then came the public Facebook post. Emergency inspection scheduled for Saturday at 9 a.m. All residents welcome to observe. We will take appropriate action. She was turning my property into theater, inviting an audience to watch her flex. Classic power move from someone terrified of losing her tiny throne. I stood on the porch that evening, watching the barn glow gold in the sunset. Grandpa always said integrity isn't loud. It's just refusing to move. I texted Emily. She's coming Saturday. I'm ready. Then I walked back to the workshop where Marcus was doing slow shoulder exercises. You sure you want in on this? I asked. You're supposed to be resting. He grinned. Badge sitting openly on the workbench now. When I see a crime happening in real time, badge or no badge, I'm obligated to act. She's choosing this. We're just letting her. The next afternoon, I met Anna Torres at a cafe 15 minutes away. Quiet financial analyst. Terrified, but done staying silent. She slid a USB across the table. Deborah's been skimming. 78 grand in 2 years. Fake landscaping invoices. Security cameras that were never installed. A president's salary, she voted herself. If this blows up during a bigger investigation, maybe I stay protected. I took the drive. This wasn't about a barn anymore. It was about a mini dictator who thought her clipboard gave her a crown. Friday night, I called neighbor Preston with the drone. Can you film Saturday? Need clean, neutral footage. His answer was immediate. I'll be there. Saturday dawned hot and tense. I deliberately put a cheap padlock on the gate, one that would snap clean for the cameras. Inside the barn, Marcus sat at the workbench in civilian clothes. Radio beside him. Badge clipped to his belt. He made one quiet call. This is Lieutenant Hale. If a 911 comes from 142 Willow Creek Lane today, tactical response requested. I'm on scene as civilian witness. High potential for escalation. Confirm standby. Backup was 10 minutes out. By 8:45, the street was lined with cars, neighbors, gawkers, popcorn almost visible. Then Deborah's convoy arrived. 3 black SUVs like she was the damn president. She stepped out in a blazer now. Sunglasses perched. Clipboard raised like a scepter. 5 neon vest clones flanked her. I hit record on my phone from the porch. Heart steady. Gary hesitated half a second. Deborah snapped. Do it. The bolt cutters bit. Crack. The crowd gasped. She shoved the gate open and marched straight into my barn like she owned the deed. Silence stretched. Then sirens, multiple cruisers. Growing louder. Inside, I knew exactly what she was seeing, my tools. The half-finished mahogany piece. The smell of linseed oil, and then her flashlight sweeping across the cot. The backpack. And the official sheriff's radio sitting right there. Her voice cracked from inside. What the? I stepped onto the porch just as 4 cruisers and a black tactical van rolled up. 8 officers in full gear. The crowd went dead quiet. Deborah stormed out. Clipboard pressed to her chest like a shield. Face the color of a ripe tomato. You can't stop us. We have every right. The lead officer didn't blink. Ma'am. Report of trespass and property damage. Explain your presence here. She launched into her script again. HOA inspection. This property is in violation. The officer's reply was flat. Is not how property law works. Ma'am. That was the cue. The barn door opened again, and Marcus Hale stepped into the sunlight, casual clothes. But that badge caught the light like a spotlight. He walked slow, favoring his shoulder. But his presence filled the entire yard. The crowd erupted in whispers. Officers straightened and nodded respect. Deborah's face drained of color so fast, I almost laughed out loud. Who are you? She stammered. Voice cracking like cheap porcelain. Why are you in his barn? Marcus stopped a few feet away. Voice calm, but carrying to every phone recording. Lieutenant Marcus Hale. Davidson County Sheriff's Office. I've been a guest here recovering from injury. Mr. Caldwell is a friend, and I watched you cut that lock and enter after repeated written notice you had no right. The crowd lost it. Gary dropped the bolt cutters with a clang that sounded like a jail door closing. Deborah tried one last desperate swing. This is a conflict of interest. You're protecting him because he's your buddy. The whole thing is corrupt. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He just laid out the facts like he was reading her obituary. First, this property has never been under HOA jurisdiction, Mr. Caldwell never signed your covenants. Zero legal obligation. Second, you and your team just committed criminal trespass and criminal mischief in front of witnesses and cameras. Third, as a sworn officer, even off duty, I am required to report crimes I observe. Everything you're saying right now is being recorded by at least 30 people. I strongly suggest you stop talking before you make it worse. I finally stepped off the porch. Voice steady. I have an independent appraisal from 6 months ago. That eyesore barn actually adds 3 to 5% to surrounding values. Character feature. They called it. Happy to email the full report to anyone who wants it. 3 neighbors immediately shouted their emails. The cuffs clicked on Deborah with a sound sweeter than any symphony. She shrieked. You'll all regret this. I have power here. Marcus's final line landed like a scalpel. You had influence. Mrs. Whitaker. Not power. There's a difference. Influence is earned. Power is what you try to steal. Today somebody called your bluff. Gary and the rest were detained for questioning. The tactical team cleared the barn. My lawyer Emily arrived in record time, already drafting the civil suit for harassment, defamation, and emotional distress. We were pressing every charge. 3 days later, the county auditor announced a full investigation into Willow Creek HOA finances, citing the USB I had given me. Deborah Whitaker, already facing criminal trespass, was now looking at felony theft, forgery, and fraud. The neighborhood group chat, once her echo chamber, turned into a confession booth. Neighbors poured out stories of threats over fence height, garden colors, even Christmas lights that were too festive. Turns out she hadn't been protecting property values. She'd been protecting her own wallet and ego. The final sentencing hearing months later was packed. I sat in the back with Emily. When it was my turn, I walked to the podium and looked Deborah dead in the eye. Your Honor, I don't want revenge. I want everyone here to understand one thing. Power without accountability, even the petty clipboard kind, destroys everything it touches. Mrs. Whitaker believed her title justified breaking laws. That's not leadership. That's tyranny with better landscaping. This community deserves better. The gavel fell. 3 years supervised probation. Full $78,000 restitution to the HOA and a lifetime ban from ever holding any HOA office in the state. Deborah's face when they let her out was the definition of crying in the club. All that fake politeness finally peeled away, revealing the scared little tyrant underneath. Life slowly returned to the quiet I'd always wanted. The new HOA board, Anna Torres elected president by landslide, formally apologized, reimbursed every dime of my legal fees, and issued a notarized statement admitting my property had never been under their rules. Marcus's shoulder healed. He went back to full duty but still drops by for coffee and to admire whatever peace I'm restoring. The new board even renamed the community clubhouse Integrity Hall. Cheesy. Maybe. But after years of Deborah's circus, it felt earned. I replaced the cheap lock with a solid hand-forged one. Next to it, I carved a small wooden sign. Boundaries aren't suggestions. People still ask if it was worth all the stress. The public drama. The months of wondering if the neighborhood would turn on me. My answer is always the same. It was never about the barn. It was about the line. The invisible line every bully thinks they can redraw because they wear the right polo shirt. No one, no matter how righteous they sound on Facebook, gets to cross boundaries that were never theirs to begin with. Deborah thought she was the law. Turns out the law had been living in my barn the whole time, sipping coffee and waiting for her to swing those bolt cutters one time too many. Look, this wasn't some Hollywood revenge fantasy. It was just one guy who stayed quiet, documented everything, and let the truth do the heavy lifting. Power corrupts, especially the tiny, petty kind that hides behind protecting property values. Respect boundaries, or watch them snap back with handcuffs. That's the real lesson. What would you have done if your HOA Karen came for your grandpa's barn? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if you're dealing with your own clipboard tyrant right now, stay calm. Stay recording. And remember, the law doesn't belong to whoever yells the loudest. It belongs to the people willing to defend it.